how much is learning that there's life on other worlds? How much is that worth? And not just arguing about what we see in a spectroscope, but seeing it up close.
We are back with another episode of the Cold Star Project. Space is tonight's topic. We are talking about something called the Breakthrough Starshot with Adam Crowl, blogger at Crowl Space. It is late where he is, early where I am. The flip side of what we tried last time. So we'll see which one we like better, but I appreciate you being back. Adam, what is the Breakthrough Starshot? What is this thing, and why should the average person on the street care?
Well, it's basically a technology initiative to give us the capability to send probes to other star systems. Since we now know that the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, has a planet, and it's very likely that other nearby stars have suitable planets, we need to go look up close. Because by the time that Starshot's ready, we'll have the telescopic technology to scope these planets out, but to actually verify that data, because there's only so much that you can study in a point of light. So we want to be able to get some images back to us.
Okay. So get beyond the spectrographical analysis at considerable.
Well, yeah, it's more that when we look at a point of light and examine a spectrogram, you're seeing a very one-dimensional image. As strange as that sounds, it's a point of light, but yeah. So really, you need to see a planet as a whole, because atmospheres can be deceiving. One thing that we're realizing is that traditional signs of life, like free oxygen in an atmosphere, doesn't necessarily equate to the presence of life. It could be created by other processes. So to verify, to learn more, we have to get up close and personal. Of course, Starshot intends to do that with some very lightweight technology. This microsails they plan to launch, although they're like meters wide, they only weigh 1 gram or 2 grams, and so the circuits that they have will be the efforts of miniaturization that, basically like the scale of Apollo back in the 60s, miniaturizing circuits. It's that kind of jump again in technology. So it's not just the probe; it's the power systems, the energy storage, the automation to build the energy emitting arrays in order to push these ultralight sails to other stars. All those things will feed into the effort, and it's really like a technology program. That's what Yuri Milner, the chief person funding it, really wants to achieve.
Okay. And you know a couple of people inside this organization. It's not like we're looking at it from 1,000.
Yeah. Well, there's several people from Icarus Interstellar, or Project Icarus, and also 100-Year Starship, and Starship Century. So, for example, Jim Benford and Greg Benford. Jim and Greg are twins, and Greg's a science fiction writer, as well as both of them being trained physicists. They're on the board of advisors and heavily involved in the interstellar community. But there's also Kelvin Long, who I worked with on Project Icarus, and yeah, other people as well from NASA and different universities, of course.
Okay, so we're getting a bunch of smart people together as resources, and also there's this culmination of technology that is approaching.
That's right.
Where we're going to get sort of best in class for a while, I guess, kind of thing. And so since we've seen these other planets out there, they're not that far away, and we could get to them.
Yeah.
Everything about propulsion in space so far that I've seen is about pushing. You don't seem to be able to pull in space, right? And so the idea here is we get a big sail, big relative to the size of this little chip that we're sending.
Yeah.
That's tiny.
Correct.
The sail is, but from standard scale of space stuff, all of this is very small, right? All these things are quite small, and we're going to use energy, I guess, from the sun or solar winds to push this thing with the sail. Where's that energy coming from?
Indirectly, the suggestion is that it will require lasers or microwave or millimeter wave emitters. But the logical choice for power is solar. Because one of the suggested locations, since Alpha Centauri and Proxima are in the southern hemisphere, is the high and very dry Atacama Desert in South America. And one suggestion is that they might look at machines that convert the desert sands directly into solar collectors.
Okay, silica, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's been suggested for the moon, and the Atacama would be a perfect place to try it out on Earth before we try and send it to the moon. But I mean, ultimately, if transport to the moon gets cheap enough, then it's possible to set it up, say, on the far side of the moon.
Okay, and that would be good because you wouldn't have the Earth's gravitational pull to escape from.
Well, partly that, partly the laser doesn't have the atmosphere to punch a hole through, and partly the fact that the moon's rotation is much slower than the Earth's.
Okay. So for those listening who don't understand science that much, the point of the laser is to start making a beam of energy that's pushing this sail. And so you're kind of giving it a punch or a kickstart to get that sail going.
Yeah, the sail, it's essentially a mirror. Okay. And light bouncing off the sail, of course, goes in the opposite direction.
Right.
So conservation of momentum, one thing pushes the other and off it goes. But of course, in order to get up to the speed that they want, which is 20 to 25% speed of light, so that's 75,000 kilometers per second, or in old money, it's like 180 million miles an hour. Those sort of speeds, you've got to push at very high acceleration. So we're talking 10,000 times Earth's gravity or more for several minutes. And it'll be over a distance that's a fraction of the distance between the Earth and the Sun. So we're talking tens of millions of miles. So that kind of push, it's an incredible amount of energy focused on a sail that weighs a fraction of an ounce, and it's being pushed with a force that's would flatten a human being. And we want that sail to survive, so it has to be made of very special materials. Of course, the buzz material is graphene, which has incredible properties, but just happens to be rather hard to make at the minute. But that's the whole point of this industry or this research effort, is that if we can have these materials breakthroughs, then they'll become more available. Being able to make it in meter sizes means that it opens up the possibilities for other applications.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about space exploration. I mean, even since the 60s, I think of it as a big pyramid, right? With at the old time, NASA on top. Now there's private firms that are doing stuff, right? Where they're coming up with these ideas and new materials and processes, foam, ceramic heat shields, and on down. And it starts up there, but it gets into society, and suddenly your thermostats are being made of this stuff, right, in your homes. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The big trickle down effect for real this time.
Exactly. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the research papers on making large amounts of graphene or other 2D materials. One example is two-dimensional boron, which is apparently very reflective. And making star sails, thanks to Starshot getting the idea out there, is one of the uses that they immediately talk about. Even though they're talking about 100 other applications, it's that suddenly galvanized the whole field that this stuff matters. It's important, Right.
So it has to be, I guess, strong. It can't be brittle. It has to flex a bit.
Exactly.
At some point, this thing's going to have to turn around because it needs to break somehow.
Well, initially they're talking about flybys.
Okay.
So it'll zip through other planetary systems in a few hours. And like that doesn't seem like a lot of time, but we've had such successes with flyby probes in our own solar system. But it would be good if it could slow down, and I think that's kind of the next step is to think of new ways of doing that. One that I've researched time and time again is magnetic sails. So you create a magnetic field that acts like a giant parachute or braking balloon against the ionized gas between the stars. And if you can do that, then you can slow down across these distances. Although one thing I've found in my more recent research is that it's going to require some pretty incredible materials breakthroughs with superconductors. So yeah.
So how is this sail going to protect the circuit? Because I mean, at first it's going to have to go out of our solar system, and there's a thing in a radiation field in the solar system that I would imagine might cause some trouble.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's a lot of ionized particles in between here and other star systems. I think that they'll have to design it to be radiation hardened. But very likely it'll have to be a high redundancy architecture of the circuitry, so that different parts it rewires itself on the fly. Because they can more or less predict the amount of radiation damage across that distance. So you just design accordingly. But because it's so thin, it's also practically transparent to a lot of the higher energy particles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm beginning, because this is a puzzle you really need to think your way through, right? We're going to do this and send this at high speed, long distances over some period of time. I mean, it's not going to be a couple years, right? Despite this thing.
It's a couple of decades.
Right. Which is great in a sense, because now we can actually, whoever starts the program should actually be able to see the finish of it.
See the results,
But I mean, you're sending this thing so fast and it's so flimsy, and all it has to do, I mean, how do you avoid it running into a little particle of something that blasts a hole through everything as it passes along? Or are we trusting magnetic fields to push it out of the way, or what?
Well, I think the magnetic option is for bigger vehicles. In this case, it's really being debated. and that's part of the whole initiative, is to open up the forum, to have so many eyes and minds thinking about how to do this, that every option's explored. Not just the obvious, not just the orthodox, but crazy ideas, but still physically plausible ones. So it's kind of restrained imagination.
How many of these things would we send at a time? Because you're not just going to send one, obviously. You're going to want some redundancy to ensure.
Exactly right. And it's not just redundancy because of the need to communicate back to us, it'll be almost like a relay chain.
Okay.
And because they can be fired every few minutes, they'll be separated by a few 100 million miles, which sounds like a lot, but over interstellar distances, you're talking about thousands of times further. So, if they can fire every few minutes and they send a stream of a few hundred, then the odds go up of survival and getting data back.
Okay. Impact for Earth. What is this going to do for us? So we got this crazy mad scientist plan to send out a stream of light sails with chips attached to them at a quarter of the speed of light, and in 20 years they'll get to a planet in a neighboring system and be able to tell us something about it. Also, along the way, we're going to develop some new processes, new materials. What's going to happen to society from that? What are we going to learn, and how is it going to change us potentially?
Well, how much is learning that there's life on other worlds? How much is that worth? And not just arguing about what we see in a spectroscope, but seeing it up close. If you can see that there are alien forests on another planet, or you see the lights of cities on the dark side of a planet, or what have you. I mean, the value of that change of perspective. We all expect it, and there's so much UFO lore and so forth, but to have it be incontrovertible, it'll, I think, profoundly change things.
Okay. I do hope we get some high def pictures, because I was just laughing to myself about, instead of a blurry, grainy picture of something on Earth, we get the blurry, grainy picture of something over there, right? It's
Bigfoot on Proxima Centauri B.
Right. Oh, man. It's a good thing Teddy Roosevelt's sons are not still alive, because they'd be ordering a hunting expedition to run over there. They're the guys who found the giant panda. I love that story. They heard these rumors about this thing, and they went to go find it. So, and that's a funny example, actually, that just came up because you said the Sasquatch thing, right? The giant panda was kind of a myth at the time. It's stupid, it's slow, it's not it's not going out of its way to hide, and yet people couldn't really find it, right, for a long time. The thing here. Okay. Obviously, having some materials that can survive tremendous heat and pressure and impact and be able to work will be important for us. We're going to get energy storage and power generation. Power generation near and dear to my heart.
Part of the modeling of the system assumes like automation and production line, like that kind of manufacturing experience, creates capabilities that we can then apply to other problems. If they go with the option of burning solar panels out of desert sand, then where else could you do that? And the power distribution system for that sort of thing. We don't know until we try. And I think part of the problem is, since towards the end of the 20th century, a lot of things weren't tried, which could have had better outcomes. We've kind of stuck with things that are easy. And in some ways, capabilities have kind of slipped. You think of, the Concorde being taken out of service, or the space shuttle, or what have you. In many ways, it was like 30 years of stagnation. The technology went on hold in about 1975, except for the very small and the very smart. So computers got better, but all our big machines just stayed kind of old.
Right. And for those looking for another example, there are different kinds of rocket engines. that have been worked on and tried to. There's one that's kind of a V shape that really focuses the blast and whatnot, but we're still using solid propellant and these giant boosters, right? That maybe we don't need to be using that, but they're afraid to move over and invest into another technology that could potentially fail, as opposed to sticking with the big ugly thing that we've got that we know that works. Yeah.
Yeah, like what you're talking about is the Aerospike engines, and which in the early 90s with the whole Venture Star and hopefully reusable systems, that then it all turned into a fight between NASA and Lockheed about who was going to pay for it, and so in the end they just canned it. It's like politics killed technology, but maybe in the early 90s they weren't quite ready for it either.
Yeah, just we want to highlight to folks who are not necessarily really into space, right? That's what I'm hoping to do here is bring topics like what we're talking about today, Breakthrough Starshot, and some other related things that kind of get sucked along with that, to maybe more business oriented folks who don't look up a lot necessarily and hear about this kind of thing. Yeah, we are not, folks. We are not at the edge of technology where we could be at. Nowhere near. We've been shut down and paused and put on hold with restricted budgets and political decisions and kind of wolf marking territory fights and that kind of thing. So
yeah, and it's always the danger that by those in power sticking with what they can do and not trying what they could do, we end up just muddling along with an awful lot of feel-good moments, but no real advances. Although, this is not to
poo-poo
sort of
anyone.
Yeah, there's been an amazing amount of stuff achieved. Certainly, things started looking better. Pathfinder on Mars and all the rovers since, things have kind of looked up. I think people have that feeling that we really can do this. And now, this century we've got the new space breaking open the old attitudes. It's like, well, maybe there's different ways of doing things.
Right. Yeah, I remember a few years back I was interviewing vice president of business development for one of the two big asteroid mining firms. And him telling me that private industry was now wanting to get involved and fund and research things, and they were no longer trying to sort of suckle off the NASA grant funding teat. It's a big moment from my perspective, right? I was like, wow, really? I didn't know that, right? And it's kind of sad. Both of those organizations have been bought out. One's undergone a major name change. And I really wonder how that's going to work out. Hopefully it's business as usual with a little rebranding, but you never know. So what's in between us and Breakthrough Starshot, Adam? What kind of things do we need to get before we're able to actually do this?
I think, the Breakthrough Starshot initiative itself is more about the low technology readiness preparation. So it's the research work before the actual nuts and bolts. It'll go from good ideas to working hardware, and that's the next 20 years of effort to see what will happen.
Okay, so that's the timeline we're looking at, is hopefully
20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're aiming for about 2050 to see it firing off.
That's interesting, because our Yuri Milner, the Russian billionaire, he may not be alive to see this. That's interesting.
Well, I think he'd probably hope for it to be a bit sooner, 20 years from now. But who knows?
But I think that's cool. Leaders taking on projects that are bigger than themselves, right? And
Well,
this might take more than one lifetime to get going and see the results of. That's impressive.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah. Well,
So,
although I keep hearing these biomedical rumors around the place of cancer breakthroughs and that sort of thing, and you go, well, 20 years down the track, another 20 years may not look so bad. For those of us who are pushing a few decades.
Right. All right. Well, very cool. I thank you for being here, Adam. It's been great to explore this topic with you and bring it to the attention of folks who probably never heard of it, and because their attention is not on it, right? And give them an idea. And look, business people, this is an opportunity for you to get into a market and work on these things, because we've got probably in the show notes, I'll list this stuff that you've written down here, Adam. Materials, advances, energy storage, power generation, which again is near and dear to my heart because that's what I started out in right out of college, was the power industry. Very large scale arrays and some clever automation. All great process and material and power opportunities for us folks to get into.
And that's the thing, when there's money going around, then there's more money going around.
Mm-hmm.
When the chill is put on research, everything else suffers for it.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. This is a way of creating a new economy, accessing a new slice of the economy, one that is only going to expand. And I got to admit, some of this stuff is hard. It's not the easiest stuff in the world. And the good news side to that is that means competitive advantage sustained over some period of time. It will be a lot harder for someone to come in and copy you once you've got some process or some material figured out,
exactly,
and patented and whatnot.
It's the opportunity for market leaders to emerge. That's just the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with that capability, they just create more markets.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, people didn't understand how to use, I don't know, maybe steel, right? If you go to even a fictional example, Atlas Shrugged and Rearden Metal, they had to figure out, like, what are we going to do with this? Yeah, we can build rail lines and bridges with it, but we can also make bowls and jewelry out of it, right? So you never know where this stuff is going to end up in a commercial sense. And
large scale production of graphene, if it's cheap enough, as a reinforcing material and as a base material, it's amazing what it can do. It's just
to research a little more into that, because you think about curtains inside factories that is very hot on one side and protects the other side, or maybe very cold or something like that, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of application for this stuff.
It's something that's emerged, and as we play around more research-wise with better reflective materials, is the fact that we can engineer light with these structures at very tiny scales. And if you can make that large, so you have optically active surfaces, then they become heat barriers and they become ultra reflectors, and all these things become possible in new ways that we just, until we had the computing technology, just didn't know was possible. But now we're able to do these nanoscale calculations, and we're finding all these things that we can do with light at such a tiny, tiny scale.
Right. I have not looked into that for quite a while, but just you're saying this and I'm imagining in my head a circuit that uses light as the information, right, on and off and that. But I know there were like quantum logic gates in the 90s where it's like this tiny little particle, and that there or not there is your on or off, 0 or 1, right? Or whether something is allowed to pass through. And very, very tiny apparatus here with which to make a machine out of.
That's the thing, is work more with this stuff, what they can then pattern in bulk. Because if you create interference patterns over a large area, you can then shape things, and with the right materials, they will respond to the peaks and valleys in that light pattern that you create over them, so that you can pattern huge areas all at once, rather than trying to make billions of tiny little changes all in one place.
Okay. Yeah, you can put out a new energy field and recalibrate the matrix right away. Huh. Interesting. So maybe we should talk about that in our next episode, because that sounds pretty cool, and I'm imagining the possibilities right now. Because with the interference pattern, what that means is complexity over a larger area faster, right?
Yeah,
which is just
exactly
what you're saying. Instead of turning one dot on and off, I can shoot out this field and instantly reorganize the pattern.
As long as the material that you've got that it's shining onto is then changing with that varying pattern. And that's what they're discovering, is that these two-dimensional materials can be shaped by light directly. So and this has all become possible because we can now calculate these things out in detail, whereas before it was like the equations were just too laborious. But we have the computing capacity now to do it.
Well, I'm going to have to look into this more, because I can start seeing the possibilities with it, and I want to see where that goes. Awesome. Adam, where can people find out more about you? I mean, they can go to your blog.
Well, I haven't written up anything personally, and more of a technology watcher than an innovator myself. But somehow I end up being connected to all these interesting people.
Right. What is your blog so that people can go there?
Yep. Crowlspace, so CROWLSPACE.com.
Right. And Adam's blog is very science heavy, so don't go in there expecting, popular mechanics or some, what am I saying? I'm trying to say it's not going to be a slick, easy read. He
will run into algebra occasionally. There will be references, and there will be sometimes high-level concepts that you have to look up on Wikipedia.
Right. But if you really want to get into this stuff, he's talking about the real thing on it. So
plus my Twitter handle, is QRAAL.
QRAAL. Okay.
Yeah.
I know I follow you.
Yeah. So that's generally my more active thing, because I trawl through the science news and all this sort of thing. So basically it's keeping watch on certain developments, especially that optically active material, and which applies not just to laser sails, but it also applies to telescopes and lenses that can be configured on the fly and all this sort of thing. So it's funny how all these different sides of the same kind of science feed together, and the technologies that they influence.
Right.
Surprising, the combinations that arise.
Right. Okay. Well, my thanks to Adam Crowl, who stayed up late in Australia. I'm Jason Kanigan from North Carolina, and appreciate you being here.